Ladies and gentlemen, if you're excited for set 4, give the video a like. The Speci content machine is officially rolling. I'm going to be building a whole bunch of decks over the next few days to share with you all. But in today's video, we're looking at my favorite cards from the set, which there's a lot of them. I wanted to really highlight every single card which I think is of interest and might see some competitive play. So we've got around 70 cards to look at. We're going to start off with Amber, working our way through each ink color. And look at this family, but look at this Enchanted, ladies and gentlemen. I think this is my favorite artwork from the set that I've seen so far. I want to get my hands on one of these. And look at this family is one of the strongest sing together cards, I believe. I think it's probably second place behind the Amethyst card, which we'll be taking a closer look at later. The reason I really like this one is it's inkable, it's tutoring 2 cards into your hand, but moreover, it's in Amber, where you already have access to a lot of very powerful Singer cards. We've got the new Ursula, which we'll be looking at in a minute, which is Singer 4. We've got Ariel, which is of course Singer 5. I think it's just going to be a very, very solid card in a whole bunch of Amber decks. Up next, we've got Ursula Vanessa, the card I got to reveal. Let's go. This is going to have a special place in my heart. Yeah, I think it's just a very solid card. Singer 4 with these Sing Together cards is very, very powerful. And I would expect her to see a lot of competitive play. Also some Ursula Shift cards to look out for later on. We've got Ariel, Singing Mermaid, Singer 7. This one in the starter deck as well, worth mentioning. You get 1 copy of this in the Amber and Amethyst starter deck. Not the most impressive stat line, but the fact she also quests for 2 is a pretty big deal. So you're either singing with her, you can sing Just Look at This Family with her on her own, or quest for 2 is also not too shabby either. I think it's a solid card. Cinderella, Melody Weaver, a legendary card with Singer 9. Quest for 2, when this character sings a song, your other princess characters get +1 lore this turn. I don't think this card's amazing, to be fair. I did want to highlight it though as definitely an interesting legendary card which could see some competitive play, some support for princess decks. Singer 9 is obviously a lot of singing, that is for sure. Record player, very interesting item. Whenever you play a song, chosen character gets -2 strength until the start of your next turn. And Hit Parade, your character's name Stitch, count as having 1+ cost to sing songs. Not really sure that Hit Parade is particularly relevant, but the ability to remove strength from your opponent's cards could be very, very powerful when combined with a lot of the other cards we've got in this set, which we'll be taking a bit of a look at later. In particular, there's an Emerald Song and also a Ruby Sisu card, which could synergize impressively well with Record Player, so one to keep an eye on. Atlantica is a location in Amber, which if you put your Ursula Deceiver of All into Atlantica, suddenly your Ursula Deceiver of All can be singing 5 cost songs. So in an Amber and Emerald deck, you could sing And Then Along Came Bruno with Ursula to achieve that twice. So that's also a very interesting card. Daisy Duck Musketeer Spy. Oh my goodness, this card I love the look of. You guys know me, I love my discard cards. And Daisy Duck is very comparable to Friar Tuck, which is a bit of a mascot of this channel here. Friar Tuck obviously became very competitive in Emerald Steel, and Daisy Duck is very similar to Friar Tuck. It has 1 less lore, which is a huge deal, and it also has 1 less willpower. However, it is always discarding a card whenever you play it, regardless of the amount of cards each player has in hand. So Daisy Duck essentially has a higher floor than Friar Tuck because its discard ability is always going through, but a lower ceiling, right? It doesn't have that ability to quest for 2 and it has less stats, but it's definitely a card which is going to be better going second. Friar Tuck often is very, very powerful when going first, because you naturally have less cards than your opponent. But Daisy Duck, if going second, I think Daisy Duck is really, really good. I think she'll see some play in a whole bunch of Amber decks. I like the card a lot. Up next we have Ursula Eric's Bride, which is one of the few shift cards of this new mechanic which I'm highlighting today, because I think a lot of them are quite lackluster. I think we've got 2 of them in this video. Ursula's Eric Bride I like a lot. Also a card to look out for in Amber Emerald in particular, because you can shift her onto Ursula Deceiver, the 2 cost. She quests for 2, but moreover, whenever this character quests, chosen opponent reveals their hand and discards a non-character card of your choice. So she's very similar to Bare Necessities, but with a body which quests. When she quests for 2, it's pretty impressive. Of course, you can shift her onto your Ursula 2-drop as well. if you discard a song card, and then you could quest with her instantly. So you play Ursula Deceiver on turn 2, you see what your opponent has in their hand. On turn 3, you play Prince John, and then you discard a song card from your hand to shift in Ursula. You can instantly quest with her, and then you've got a way of discarding, for example, a location card that your opponent might have had in their hand, which of course Ursula Deceiver, the 2-drop, is unable to do, but Ursula's Eric Bride would be able to discard items, actions, songs, anything that's not a character. Pretty cool card, and definitely one of the better cards with this new shift mechanic. Julieta Madrigal, also in the starter deck. Initially this card just seemed like a budget Rapunzel, but the more you look at this card, the better she becomes. I think this card really, the most obvious comparison actually, is Maleficent from set 1 in Amethyst, the 3-cost 2/2. Whenever you play this character, remove up to 2 damage. If you remove damage this way, you may draw a card. Amber Ruby looks like an insane deck to me, and Julieta Madrigal is just going to be consistently getting you value in that deck. So in decks which usually would struggle for card draw, like Ruby Amber, suddenly you just have a decent card to play down. I think she's going to be really good in the right deck. Gaston Despicable Dealer is also a fascinating card, very comparable to Doc. You can exert this, so rather than questing, which Doc does, you get 2 lore, and Doc of course reduces the cost of the next card you play by 1. Gaston is not gaining you any lore when you use its ability, but you pay 2 less for the next character you play this turn. So on turn 4, for example, you could play Bedita, or any other 6 cost like a Madame Medusa, for example. Very powerful card. Also, that 4 willpower means he's pretty difficult to remove in a single swoop. I think it's going to see some play. Mickey Mouse Musketeer Captain is not a card I like that much, if I'm honest, but I did still want to highlight it as an interesting legendary card. When you play this character, if you use Shift to play him, you may draw a card for each character with Bodyguard. Now, when I talked about this card in the past, someone in the comments, shout out to the comments, pointed out to me that actually this would include itself. So if you shift this on to, in particular, I think the 3-cost Mickey Mouse from Sapphire is the most obvious one, because that's obviously a very powerful deploy ability, which doesn't actually do much once it's on the board. Then Mickey Mouse would instantly draw you a card in its own right. And if you've got an abundance of bodyguards, obviously it could be pretty good. I don't think it's going to be great, but there's a lot of new bodyguard characters in Amber this set, so definitely one to keep an eye on. All right, moving on to Amethyst. Magic Broom Illuminary Keeper. When you play another character, you may banish this character to draw a card. So this card is very comparable to Chernobog's Followers, which is a card I like a lot. Of course, they have their strength and willpower reversed, but Magic Broom, definitely a card to keep an eye on. It's certainly a good Magic Broom card, which is not something you see very often, and definitely a very interesting bit of synergy is with the legendary Yen Sid. When you play this character, if you have a character named Magic Broom in play, you may draw a card, and while you have 2 or more Broom characters in play, this character gets +2 lore. Listen, I don't think all-in Broom decks are going to be very good, but if they are, this is certainly the power combo, really. This turn 1, turn 2 play does have potential, that's for sure. Up next we have Bruno Madrigal, the Undetected Uncle. This one is not in the starter deck, even though Madrigals are kind of the theme of the Amber and Amethyst starter deck, but it is one of the better Madrigal cards, I think. It has a lot of potential. It's an evasive, and its ability reads, you can exert it, name a card, then reveal the top card of your deck. If it's the named card, put that card into your hand and gain 3 lore. So Bruno Madrigal is kind of questing for 3 and adding a card to your hand every time it does that. If, of course, you can actually get the card right. So how are you going to do that? Well, you could play a deck with 4 Bruno Madrigals and 99 copies of the puppy. You're not going to do that. More likely, you're going to be playing cards which put a card on top of your deck. Maybe like a card which quests, and then you put a card on top of your deck. You've got cards like Ursula's Cauldron. There's all sorts of different ways you can put a card on top of the deck. Develop Your Brain is, I don't think quite doing it. But you know what I mean. These kinds of cards, there's a lot of them, and therefore in the right deck, Bruno Madrigal could be utterly bonkers. He's evasive, adding a card every time you quest, and gaining 3 lore. Obviously, you're not actually questing, but if you're gaining lore and exerting him, it's very comparable to questing. Very, very, very high potential card in the right deck. Up next, we have Dolores Madrigal in the starter deck. Not that impressive, but just a solid card I think we'll see play. When you play this character, if an opponent has an exerted character in play, you may draw a card. That's pretty good. She has good stats, quest for 2. You're paying 1 ink more compared to like the Amber Mickey Mouse from set 1, which is like a vanilla 3/3 quest for 2. You're paying 1 ink more to draw a card. It's not going to be difficult for her ability to be achieved. I think she's solid. Next we have Isabella Madrigal, which is you get 1 copy of her in the starter deck, evasive, and if you have no other characters which have quested this turn, she quests for 4. However, when she quests, your other characters can't quest for the rest of this turn. Very high potential card though, not easy to remove with that 4 willpower. She is of course out of range of a lot of the tech cards which people might include to deal with Minnie Mouse Surfer, which often, you see these cards like Cruella de Vil perhaps, or the Jafar and Steel as ways of dealing with some of these evasive cards. She's out of the range of Smash. Of course she can be removed by a Medusa, but an evasive card which can quest for 4 a turn definitely has potential. I can see like just in time into this card being an interesting option, but even if not, I think a card which we'll see play. Next we have Peter Pan Shadowfinder, a card which a lot of people are going to be enjoying. Not sure how good it is. 3 cost uninkable, and it is kind of the counterpart to Peter Pan Shadow. Peter Pan Shadow is that 4 cost uninkable in Amethyst, which gives your evasive characters rush, while Peter Pan Shadowfinder is giving your characters with evasive rush. So if you have both of these down on the board, all of your cards with rush and evasive have both. So that's pretty cool. Has some potential for sure for some fun decks. Floatsome. Okay, there's a new Floatsome Jetsam archetype. Definitely going to be sharing a deck with you on that soon. It's one of the first decks I want to test out. Probably going to be more on the Mimi side, but honestly it has potential. It's going to be a Emerald Amethyst deck because there's a lot of support for it in this set. We've had in previous sets a lot of cards called Floatsome and Jetsam which never saw any play, but now there's big payoff for that, which we'll talk about. So this character, when it's banished in a challenge, returns to your hand, but moreover, will your character's name Jetsam gain when this character is banished in a challenge, return this card to your hand. That is so powerful. Oh my goodness. If you've got a whole army of Floatsome and Jetsams, in particular cheap Floatsome and Jetsams, which cost like 1 or 2, which you can just put down easily and rinse and repeat, could be an incredible card. We also know that Lyle Tiberius Roke is an Emerald card, which reads, whenever a character is banished, your opponent loses 1 law. So maybe some kind of Lyle Tiberius Roke Floatsome Jetsam deck. We have Jetsam. Also, by the way, I wanted to point out the flavor text on this one. Now the crown and trident are mine, Ursula. He snatched the trident from the betrayed Glimmer. Oh my goodness. So there's some really interesting lore stuff happening with these Jetsam Floatsome cards. This one's not as good. Has Challenger 2 and gives your character's name Floatsome Challenger 2, but it's inkable, unlike the other. But then the big payoff card is the Floatsome and Jetsam Entangling Eels, which is a 5/5 card. Shift, discard 2 cards. So we've actually got 3 cards, I think, in this video with the new shift mechanics. I forgot about this one. Discard 2 cards is incredibly expensive, but you can shift this onto a Floatsome or Jetsam or a Morph, and then this character counts as being named both Floatsome and Jetsam. I'm not convinced that you would want to take this shift ability, but rather you might just want to play it for 6. But if it's counting as Floatsome and Jetsam, this card could just give you so much stuff, right? It can have like Challenger 2, it can have whenever it's banished, return to your hand, it can have evasive, it can have ward maybe as well. There's all sorts of keywords that this one card could get, so really exciting to have that kind of deck. I think it's going to be not super competitive and more on the Mimi side of things, but still something I'm really excited to try, which is why I wanted to highlight in this video. We have Poor Unfortunate Souls. This could see some play, perhaps in a Emerald Amethyst deck, very comparable to Befuddle, but as a song, which can also return items or locations, and obviously with Ursula Deceive Reveal, you could sing this twice. We have Bell Accomplished Mystic, not the best quality. This card, I think, could be great in a Ruby and Amethyst deck. There's a bunch of new Ruby cards very comparable to Mother Gothel, which we'll be looking at in just a moment. There's a new 1-cost card and a new 3-cost card, which when you play them receive damage. And therefore, of course, Rapunzel has a lot of synergy in like a Ruby Amber deck, but also in a Ruby Amethyst deck with Belle. When you play this character, move up to 3 damage counters from chosen character to chosen opposing character. I mean, if you've got a lot of consistent cards with damage counters, that is very powerful. Doubt that you're going to be wanting to shift this on too much because there's not many good cheap Belle cards, but definitely one to look out for. Okay. Contender for best card in the set, maybe, we don't know. Obviously very difficult to evaluate a card with a brand new mechanic, but I am so excited for this card. Probably the card I'm most excited for, actually, in the set. Jafar comes to mind for sure, but even just in an Amber deck, for example, maybe without Jafar, being able to sing this very easily with cards like the Ursula, Vanessa, the 4-cost singer with like Ariel, this kind of stuff. Being able to draw 5 cards and your opponent draws nothing, wow. It's got to be good, right? It's got to be good. And of course, there's Jafar synergy in there. This card is super, super fascinating to me. I'm next with Ursula, Sea Witch Queen. One of the most interesting cards from the set. Big, bad card, basically. Whenever this character quests, exert chosen character. So she's kind of like that 2-drop Pinocchio with a huge body, which was whenever she quests. But also, very interestingly, other characters can't exert to sing songs. Now, the interesting thing is, do you want to play songs and Ursula Sea Witch Queen in the same deck? Because the most obvious place for her is probably in an Emerald Amethyst deck because of that 2-drop Ursula Deceiver card, which you might want to shift her on. Or perhaps Amethyst Amber with Ursula Vanessa being also a good shift target. Would you really want to be playing Ursula Sea Witch Queen in a deck which also plays songs? Well, I think that you might. You could sing the songs first and then play her and deny your opponent from singing songs. I think this card is fascinating. Absolutely one I'm going to be building a bunch of decks around, and I'm really, really excited to try her out. Okay, moving on to Emerald, we have Vision Slab. At the start of your turn, if a opposing character has damage, gain 1 lore, and damage counters can't be removed. Now, this is a really interesting card. As mentioned, Ruby has a lot of new cards which are damaging themselves when they enter play, and Vision Stab is therefore going to be countering those Ruby decks very, very hard. It's very comparable to Sorcerer's Spellbook, of course, but instead of spending 1 ink per turn to gain the lore, you can just gain lore if anything has damage, which shouldn't be too difficult to set up. And also, it's inkable, unlike the Sorcerer's Spellbook. Very, very interesting card. I think it could prove to be pretty good, because I do like the look of these Ruby cards, again, which are damaging themselves. I like the look of the Ruby cards a lot, which we're going to be looking at soon. Sign Contract. Whenever an opponent plays a song, you may draw a card. Super duper interesting as well. I think this card could be good in the right deck. I tend to not like these item cards which are kind of drawing you cards late. Like your opponent needs to play 2 songs for this to draw 1 card. So I'm not convinced it's great, but maybe in the right deck where you're really lacking card draw, it could prove to be a solid option. Not super convinced, but definitely an interesting one. Hidden Ink Caster is also fascinating, and I like this one a bit more. It's uninkable, but all cards in your hand count as being uninkable once it's down on the board. So if you play 4 copies of this card, you play the first one, it draws you a card, and then all of your other copies of Hidden Ink Caster are inkable. I like this card a lot. I think in a Emerald Ruby deck in particular, like imagine Be Prepared, which is inkable. Imagine Medusas and Tremaines, which are inkable. That just sounds good. That just sounds good. Be Prepared, Emerald, Ruby. Maybe. We don't talk about Bruno, one of the most interesting cards and best cards from the set, arguably. Return chosen character to their player's hand, then that player discards a card at random. This is like a Daisy Duck and Mother Knows Best in one, which can be sung. Oh, baby. Maybe the big problem you're going to have with this in a lot of decks is what are you going to sing this with? But obviously in an Amber Emerald deck, Ariel 3-drop is the most obvious card to sing this with, which could be really good. Amber Emerald decks in set 3 had a lot of discard, but just no board presence. And this is giving you a lot of board control and discard at the same time. I am super excited for this card. Maybe an auto-include in Emerald. And honestly, guys, Emerald got a lot this set. Emerald got some really good stuff. Under the Sea, I mentioned this card earlier, kind of in combination with that Rockstar DJ set, whatever it's called. Put all opposing characters with 2 strength or less on the bottom of their player's deck in any order. There is a lot of cards in the game which have 2 strength or less. So this is a board control tool for Emerald, kind of comparable to something like Grab Your Swords. Obviously, Grab Your Swords deals 2 damage and removes everything with 2 strength, 2 willpower or less. At that time, but this one removed cards of 2 strength or less. Like if you think about what Madame Medusa hits, Under the Sea is not hitting all the same things, but still hitting a lot. And Emerald having a way of dealing with board, like a wide board, is really, really fascinating. At the moment, Emerald's been best paired with Amethyst and with Steel, because you get access to cards like Madame Mim in Amethyst, and then you get cards like Stormray John's Strength for board control in Steel. But Under the Sea, again, with Bruno, maybe it gives you that extra control that you might be desiring, particularly, I think, in Amber Emerald. And next we have Zeus. Oh my goodness, this card's nuts. This card is nuts. 5 willpower, quest for 2. That is already like almost good enough to play in its own right in the right kind of deck. Okay, 0 strength is not very good. However, when this character challenges another character, he gains strength equal to the strength of chosen character this turn. So in other words, if you're challenging a card which has more strength than willpower or the same amount of strength as willpower, it will be removed. And it quests for 2. Pretty interesting. Not easy to remove. Obviously, it's not great that it has no strength when it's challenged, but a super duper interesting card. There is also some Zeus Hercules synergies, which I've not drawn attention to in this video because I think it's a bit off. Like, I don't think there's enough Zeus and Hercules cards for that to be worth it, but something to bear in mind down the line. The Muses. Oh man, this card's nuts. Ward, which is such a powerful keyword. When you play a song, you may return chosen character with 2 strength or less to their player's hand. Oh my goodness. One card I actually have not drawn attention to in this video, but it's a Sapphire song card, which costs 2, which reads, like, lower your opponent's character by 2 strength. So imagine you sing that with Ursula, bam, bam, like suddenly the Muses can be bouncing back 2 cards with like 4 strength or more at the start of the turn. Like, there's some wombo combos with this card. It has ward, so you just leave it on the board indefinitely. And I think it's going to be really good. This card looks so damn good. Also, you can bounce back your own cards with this. So, for example, you could sing something with Ursula, and then you could actually bounce back your Ursula Deceiver of all as the second card, and then replay it in the same turn to be ready for the next turn and keep rinsing and repeating. This card's good. This card's really, really good. Pegasus. Oh my goodness, this card's insane. This is the best card in the set. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Hot take, big hot take. This is my top pick for best card in the entire set. It's just a 1/1 evasive in Emerald. It's Pascal in Emerald, and it's also better than Pascal because it's always evasive. So why do I think that's the best card in the set? Well, I mean, if you look at Emerald Steel, for example, the biggest weakness really of Emerald Steel in set 3 is their lack of good 1-drops. In fact, I played Robin Hood 1-drop in Emerald Steel without the big Robin Hood a lot of the time, unironically, because there's just not many good 1-drops. Well, suddenly, in any Emerald deck you want to play, you now have Curse, Merfolk, and Pegasus. So Emerald Ruby, for example, a big weakness of that color combo in set 3 was the lack of good 1-drops. Suddenly you've got a whole bunch. This card is so good, and I think the meta is going to be kind of warping around. I think most decks are going to need to be able to deal with this. I also therefore expect Pascal to become more popular again in Amethyst because Pascal can answer it, for example. Insane card. And there's also a shift for it, which is also pretty good within its own right. This is a shift 3, also has evasive, quest for 2, and when you play this character, if you use shift to play him, your characters gain evasive until the start of your next turn. So ideally you wouldn't really want to shift onto this Pegasus, but maybe like a morph. There's also a new 2-cost Pegasus, which is also evasive, quest for 1, 3/1 in Ruby. I don't think I pulled that up, I didn't, but probably you don't want to be shifting onto this Pegasus unless your opponent presents, you know, some threat which could answer this. And then you basically just get a whole turn of being evasive. So it's kind of comparable to like the Kidda from Amber in set 3, but this card is just better because it's also evasive in its own right. Pretty flipping strong. I actually don't think this card is as good as it looks, but this card, oh man, this card's absolutely insane. Again, unironically, best card in the set, in my opinion. Diablo Maleficent Spy. Now, I don't think this card's actually very good at all, but there is a shift target for it, which makes it better. When you play this character, you may look at each opponent's hand. Yeah, that's not very good. You'd rather just have 1 extra strength. Bad card, in my opinion. But, of course, there's some utility, right? You can play this on 1 in like an Emerald Mirror, and then you actually see, oh, my opponent has 6 songs in their hand. I can play my Ursula Deceiver on turn 2, or oh, they mulliganed all their songs. I won't play my Ursula Deceiver on turn 2, and then I'll play her a little bit later on instead. So there's definitely some utility for it, but really the reason you might want to play it is because there's a shift target. I also wanted to mention this other Diablo from set 3, similar, not a very good card. This is a set 3 card, not a very good card within its own right, but is the other big shift target for Diablo Devoted Herald, which is a fascinating legendary card. It's got this new shift mechanic, discard an action card to play it for free. So you could play one of these other Diablo cards on turn 1, and then on turn 2, you can shift in this Diablo and instantly quest with it. During your opponent's turn, whenever they draw a card while this character is exerted, you may draw a card. So that's pretty damn powerful. Now, the problem is how consistent are you able to shift this on? You're also spending 3 cards from your hand. You're including bad cards like Diablo in your deck to pull off this shift combo more consistently. You also might want to play Morph, for example. But then you're playing 3 cards from hand because you have the 1-drop Diablo, you have this Diablo, and then you also have the action card. So that's -3 cards in hand. However, you instantly draw a card at the start of your opponent's turn because it's going to be exerted and they draw a card. So it's -2 cards in hand to get it down on the board. So that's really not bad at all. And it's not that easy to remove, right? It's evasive. Baboom, I would expect to be quite popular this set. You've got Storm Rage on, which can remove it. A Quest for 1. Obviously a very powerful card. I think that this card is not as good as it appears, is my hot take. But it's, without doubt, an incredible card, and I think it will be competitive. I just think that this card is quite easy to get a little bit too excited about, and I just want to kind of damper the expectations. I think it's good, but 3 cards from your hand to play is a big investment, and moreover, the cards that you're putting in your deck to pull off this shift combo are not very good. So, one to keep an eye on for sure. Very, very fascinating card. But I don't think it's good as most people think it is. It's definitely good though. Up next, Hey Hey. Oh my goodness, this card. One of my favorite cards from the set. It's in German, but you can read above. When you play this character, if an opponent has more cards in their inkwell than you, you may put the top card of your deck into your inkwell face down and exerted. Dude, this card is actually obscenely good. It quests for 2, so it's like a Mickey Mouse vanilla card. I always like comparing them to kind of vanilla cards. The Mickey Mouse from set 1 with 1 strength less, with huge upside. Being able to ramp in Emerald is a insanely powerful tool. Because Emerald doesn't have an abundance of card draw, often you might be relying on Prince John for card draw, for example in like an Emerald Ruby deck, as I mentioned, which I really wanted to be good in set 3, but it was lacking card draw and it was lacking good 1-drops. Well, now you have this 1-drop Pegasus and you have Hey Hey. So Hey Hey is better when going second in theory, because let's say you on turn 4 your opponent's at 4 ink, you're going to be still at 3 ink, then you just play Hey Hey before you ink anything, and then you just go up and ink. You ramp with a card which quests for 2, which means that you have 1 extra card in hand compared to inking a card, right? Which is really a big deal in a color combination which you're struggling to draw cards in. Insanely good card. Oh my goodness. One of the best cards in the set, I think. I think it's really good. Also important to note, it's one of the few cards in Disney Lorcana which is better when going second, right? Which is great. Cards which improve your deck when going second are hard to come by. There's Jafar, Keeper of Secrets from set 1, which also in theory is better when going second. And this is another card. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Crikey! Quest for 3. When you play this character, your other characters get +3 strength this turn. That's not bad. It's not amazing. But in the right kind of deck, absolutely this could see some play. Inkable. What's not to like? Prince Philip. Weird old card. Shift 6. It's evasive. And when you play this character, banish all opposing characters with at least 1 damage counter. Hello Morph. Hello Tinkerbell. Hello Emerald Steel. Big dudes. Maybe with Bucky. Serious card. That's for sure. Goofy, the super goof. This card's insane. Rush, and when this character challenges another character, gain 2 lore. That's pretty impressive. That is pretty flipping impressive. Would definitely benefit from some kind of card which could boost its strength instantly. So you play it and then you're able to, maybe with like a support card, for example, give this some extra strength. That seems like a nice little combo. Maybe there's some items as well you could use to give this some extra strength. But just a great card within its own right. I expect it to be almost auto-include in a lot of Ruby decks. Snuggly Duckling. The Disreputable Pub. This card's cool. It's a location card which is not gaining any lore the turn you play it, but can gain lore later on. And it can gain a lot of lore. And it has 9 willpower, which is a lot. When you play a character with 3 strength, when a character with 3 strength or more challenges another character while here, gain 1 lore. If the challenger character has 6 strength or more, gain 3 lore. So if you've got a Maui down in the Snuggly Duckling, bam, 3 lore while you're clearing with Maui. Yes, please. Yes, please. Sisu, the Emboldened Warrior. This character gets +1 strength for each card in opponent's hands. Very good, probably. High potential. Again, if you compare it to Mickey Mouse, that vanilla card, 3/3 quest for 2. Well, this has 1 extra willpower, and quite often it's going to have a lot more strength as well in the right deck. Interesting card for sure. Not the most impressive, but a card which is good enough to see some competitive play, and one I wanted to highlight for that reason. Imperial Proclamation. This is a really fascinating card, quite comparable to Lantern and Pluto. It's kind of a hybrid between Pluto and Lantern. It's inkable, unlike Pluto and Lantern, which also you therefore would expect it to have a slightly weaker ability as a result of that. When you play whenever one of your characters challenges another character, you pay 1 ink less for the next character you play this turn. The problem with this is, let's say you play it on turn 1, then what are you going to do on turn 2? You're not going to be challenging anything. Okay, you could like rush in with a Queen of Hearts or a Rocket Stitch and play a 1-drop, but that's not really that likely you would want to be doing that anyway. So it takes a while for this card to actually get its value, whereas what you could do is on turn 2 you could play a Lantern, for example, and then instantly play a 1-drop. So I will mention it's whenever one of your characters challenges another character. So later on the game, this can be giving you like -2, -3 cost reduction, which is a big deal. So it's definitely a very, very powerful card in the right deck, and one I'm very excited to try. Maybe in like a Ruby Sapphire deck, because it's just a cheap card for Flavisham. Brawl. Banish chosen character with 2 strength or less. Suddenly a very efficient answer that Ruby has to Ursula Deceiver of All, for example. That's the most obvious one that comes to mind. There's a whole lot of cards with 2 strength or less. Pretty interesting card. Be King Undisputed. I love the look of this one. Each opponent chooses and banishes one of their characters. So it's a song card with Lady Tremaine's ability. Amber Ruby songs, maybe, possibly. Also, this can be sung by the Ursula Vanessa card, Singer 4, can be sung by Flavisham. Seems good. Seems very good. Tuck Tuck, Lively Partner. Now, the Snuggly Duckling is a card to bear in mind with this one. It's evasive, and when you play this character, you may move him and one of your other characters to the same location for free. The other character gets +2 strength this turn. That's pretty damn powerful. So you play the Snuggly Duckling. Let's say you have like a Captain Hook or something on turn 1, and then the Snuggly Duckling on turn 2, and then you play Tuck Tuck on turn 3. You can move both Tuck Tuck and the Captain Hook into the Snuggly Duckling. Bam, your Captain Hook challenges something and you gain 3 lore. That's got a lot of potential. That's for sure. This card just looks good. Beast Wounded. Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, this is where the fun really starts, because the next couple cards are going to be incredible. They just are. Especially the next one. But Beast Wounded is Mother Gothel, but one that costs 3. This character enters play with 4 damage. Quest for 2. So it's going to be a 2/2 when it enters the board. Rapunzel, anybody? Oh my goodness. Obviously that Bell card we looked at before. Rapunzel on Beast Wounded, you just draw 3 cards. The consistency of Ruby Amber with Rapunzel popping off has just gone through the roof. And a lot of people are going to be like, oh my goodness, Mufasa. I would mention Mufasa might make the cut, but I think it's also very likely that Mufasa is not even the way to go with Ruby Amber. But Ruby Amber looks very strong, because there's also Milan Injured Soldier, I would argue a contender for one of the best cards in the set, unironically, partly because of the shift card we're going to be looking at next. But this is a 2/3 which enters play with 2 damage. So it can be removed very, very easily. But again, Rapunzel synergy, also that Julieta Madrigal character, which is that 3-cost card which heals something by 2, I believe. And you draw a card if you healed any damage. Look at the synergies, ladies and gentlemen, between Ruby and Amber. And then, more importantly with this Milan, also, like, Ruby Amber really struggles with the 1-drops, right? A lot of the decks just play Pluto, which is lame. Now you've got that item, potentially we looked at a minute ago. You've got Pluto still as an option, but Milan is a no-brainer in that one, that's for sure. Because look at this. Oh, wait till the next card. This is another Milan card, worth mentioning because of the shift card we're going to be looking at. I don't think this one's anywhere near as good, but maybe in a Ruby Emerald deck could be okay. But this card, oh my goodness, the Milan Elite Archer. Powerhouse Legendary. When you play this character, if you use Shifter player, she gets +3 strength this turn. She would be a 5/6 if you shift her onto either of these Milans, also a morph. During your turn, whenever this character deals damage to another character in a challenge, deal the same amount of damage to 2 other chosen characters. That's absurd. So you play the Milan on turn 1, maybe on turn 4 you Rapunzel to heal it up. Then down the line, you on turn 5 play Milan, Elite Archer, shift it in, deal 5 damage to 3 different things at once. Ruby Amber looks insane. Sisu, I'm not that huge on this card, but I wanted to highlight it. Quite comparable to the Emerald Sing Together song. I would wager the Emerald Sing Together song is probably better than this. When you play this character, banish all opposing characters with 2 strength or less. It's okay. I mean, it's the aerial song with a body. It's uninkable. It's definitely got potential. That's for sure. There's not really a big difference, though, between banishing characters and putting them on the bottom of the deck, right? I think you're quite happy to put them on the bottom of the deck or banish them in most decks. Obviously, in a mill deck, that wouldn't be the case, but that's not really going to be relevant very often. The problem with Sisu is it's uninkable, but maybe also, you know, like I was going to say with the Spellcaster, which the item which turns all cards inkable, but you'd be more likely to just probably play the Sing Together song. Maybe you wouldn't. Interesting card, no doubt. Definitely got potential. Quest for 3, that's no joke. Obviously, Ruby just has a lot of very powerful uninkable cards, like Madame Medusa, Lady Tremaine. So to play a expensive card like this, it's going to be pretty difficult to fit it in, but maybe. Hercules, the Daring Demigod. I like this card a whole bunch. I really like this card. It's Maui, but it's worse because it's uninkable and it just has, I mean, it has 1 strength more, but it has less willpower. Mate, this card's great. Like, you can just play this as a one-of, and then suddenly you basically have 5 Mauis, kind of. Not exactly. But I think this card's really, really good. It's going to see competitive play, in my opinion, for sure. Flynn Rider Frenemy. This card excites me a lot. Also, another card I'm looking at maybe in Amber Ruby. I think Perdita is a card which absolutely comes to mind with this one. At the start of your turn, if you have a character in play with strength more than each opposing character, gain 3 lore. So you can just leave Flynn Rider chilling on the board, never questing with him. He doesn't have ward, admittedly, so he can be removed. And you just gain like a whole bunch of lore each turn if you have a board control kind of deck. You're just removing your opponent's cards. You're playing big, bad boys like Maui and Hercules. The Flynn Rider later on in the game could absolutely pop off. I'm not convinced it's a card you would want to play on turn 2 necessarily. But yeah, with Perdita, that could be pretty interesting, right? If you've got a pretty strong board, you could be resurrecting something like Flynn Rider to be gaining a whole bunch of lore later on in the game. Fascinating card. All right, moving on to Sapphire. Ice Block. It's a cheap item. Always worth mentioning because of Flaversham. You can exert it and chosen character gets -1 strength this turn. That's honestly not bad. I doubt it's going to see that much play because it's uninkable, but worth bearing in mind. Flaversham, Sapphire, items. Had to be mentioned. Great Stone Dragon. Very comparable to a much slower Fishbone Quill, but in a deck which struggles for card draw, it could be okay. You don't really get the benefit from this until a couple turns later. You play it on turn 3, and you don't really see that ramp, therefore, until turn 5, when you would have 6 ink if you've only played this. So it's not great, but it could definitely see some play. Dig a Little Deeper is the Sing Together song from Sapphire. You get 2 copies of it in the starter deck, maybe in a Amber Sapphire deck with lots of singers, it could be solid. Not sure on this one, but it's definitely got potential. Scuttle. This card is potentially very good. It's very comparable to Ariel 3-drop from set 1, whose name I really need to learn. I think Spectacular Singer. When you play this character, look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal an item card and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. The reason I like this card so much is obviously you can just be adding like popsicles, whatever it might be, into your hand, but also it can sing 1 jump ahead. So you play it on turn 2, maybe play the Mama Odie card from set 3, then on turn 3 and sing 1 jump ahead, and then you've got big ramp instantly. Scuttle looks really good in the right kind of deck, but even without the Mama Odie, I think it's just a solid turn 2 play for Sapphire. Rapunzel, Appreciative Artist. You get 1 copy of this in the starter deck. While you have a character named Pascal in play, this character gains ward. Quest for 3, it's a princess, it's a hero, there's some synergies there potentially. It could be good, maybe in a Sapphire Amethyst deck with the 1-drop Pascal from set 1. Yeah, looks solid. Han's Noble Scoundrel. When you play this character, if a princess or queen character is in play, gain 1 lore. If you compare this card to the Mickey Mouse I keep drawing your attention to, it has 1 strength, 1 willpower less, but you can gain 1 extra lore by just having a princess or queen character in play. Again, maybe in a Sapphire Amethyst deck with princesses and queens. There could be something happening there. You could also then bounce Hans back, right, and replay him kind of like a goat and gain lore. Aerial Treasure Collector. This card is impressively good. It has Ward. It quests for 3. While you have more items in play than each opponent, this character gets +2. Quest for 5. Oh my goodness, this card's absurdly good. And it has Ward. Contender for one of the best cards in the set, I think. Ariel's Grotto. I wasn't actually going to mention this one, but I spoke to my friend Sky, who's kind of the daddy of the Steel Sapphire decks, and he mentioned, this is McDuck mana for 2 cost. And it isn't, but it kind of is. It doesn't gain you any lore instantly, but while you have 3 or more items in play, this location gets +2 lore. And there's a bunch of new cheap items. In particular, there's a new Popsicle-like card in Steel, which we'll be looking at in a bit, which is like a 1-cost item which draws you a card when you play it. So in a Steel Sapphire deck, you have 8 Popsicle-like cards. It should be pretty easy to achieve this. Obviously with the Aerial Treasure Collector as well. It's got potential. I'm not convinced, but not really a card I would imagine you want to play on turn 2. But then again, if you play it on turn 2, your opponent might just ignore it for a little while, right? And then eventually it becomes a big threat down the line. Anna True-Hearted, you get 1 foil copy of this in the starter deck, a Queen hero. When this character quests, your other hero characters get +1 lore this turn. Not amazing, but in my tests with the starter deck, because I have actually played with this card because I got sent the starter decks early, she was very good. Anna, Braving the Storm. Now this card is great. If you have another hero character in play, this character gets +1 lore. It's very, very easy to achieve this. There's many, many heroes in the game. Just a solid card. I mean, a 1/4 which quests for 2 is great. There's Wendy Darling, which is that 1/3 in Amber, which quests for 2. And then you've got Mr. Smee, which is a 3/3, which quests for 2. Obviously, she's no Mr. Smee. Mr. Smee's still one of the best 2-drops around. But it's a lot of willpower for a card which quests for 2, no doubt. And I think this is the last one, the Queen. She's actually a legendary card. This is the enchanted version, because the legendary version is in Italian that we have. This card's interesting. It's a 3 cost, and you exert her, so not when you play her, but the turn after. Instead of questing, you look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal an item card and put it in your hand. If the item costs 3 or less, you may play it for free instead, and it enters play exerted. Put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So obviously if you shoot her a Popsicle with this, for example, you play the Queen on turn 3, you exert her on turn 4, and you get to play a Popsicle instantly. So she's adding a card to your hand. I don't think she's great, honestly. I'm not super convinced. She's lacking a little bit, but she's interesting. She's inkable as well. That's important to note. She's solid. I don't think she's amazing though. All right, finally, last but certainly not least, we've got my favorite Steel cards. We've got Aerial Sonic Warrior. This is one of the first cards we saw. She has Shift 4. Whenever you play a song, you may pay 2 ink to deal 3 damage to chosen character. So she's like Smash with a body, and she's got 8 willpower. She's incredibly difficult to remove, but of course she is within Madame Medusa range. It's got to be good, right? It's got to be good. Amber Steel songs, we know, has just been strong since set 1. I don't see that changing, and she seems like a great addition to those kinds of decks. Donald Duck Buccaneer, also not a card I'm super convinced by, but I could see a deck being built around this card which enables him to be good. During your turn, whenever this character banishes a character in a challenge, your other characters get +1 lore this turn. It's a pirate and it's a captain, so with Jolly Roger in Steel Ruby, pirate deck, bam, he rushes in, and suddenly the turn you play him, you could be gaining like 3 lore from him if your board is wide enough, right? So that's pretty interesting. Also, maybe the potential of using cards which ready him and allow him to challenge twice in a turn. That would give all of your other characters +2 lore this turn. So certainly a very, very interesting card, that's for sure. Hercules Beloved Hero, not a card I'm huge on. Also a card you get a foil copy of in the starter deck. But honestly, he's pretty damn impressive. A bodyguard with resist and this amount of stats, which quest for 2. I honestly like the card quite a lot. I really, really do. I think it's solid. LeFou, opportunistic flunky. I love this card. My friends over on Podcana revealed this card and they weren't convinced, but when they showed me, I was like, yeah, I like it. Particularly good in a deck which has an abundance of card draw. So maybe in a Amethyst Steel deck, where you've got perhaps like the Sing Together 10 card or a Whole New World, any Whole New World deck. During your turn, you may play this character for free if an opposing character was banished in a challenger's turn. That's pretty good. Stats on the board for free. Moreover, a deck which would like to sing 3-cost cards or maybe contribute towards that Sing Together as well. I think this card's going to be really good. Steel Amethyst looks like the home for this one. Can sing friends. It can contribute towards that Sing a 10 for the Amethyst Sing Together card, which name I can't quite remember. Whole New World is obviously going to allow you to refill your hand pretty often. I want to build Jafar Steel Amethyst, and I think this card would absolutely make the cut. I really like the look of it. I think it's a really cool card. I next have Mickey Mouse Playful Sorcerer, which is a great card. The problem is it's supporting brooms, which I don't think are very good. So I don't think this is going to be great, but you never know. I think that the broom deck is maybe aimed at Ursula's co-op mode. I can never remember, like the Illumineers quest. I got it. I think the broom deck is kind of a focus for the Illumineers quest, because I think you get Yensid and this Mickey Mouse as part of that co-op adventure. When you play this character, deal damage to chosen character equal to the number of broom characters you have in play. So if you have 3 brooms, bam, you deal 3 damage. That's kind of cool, but I doubt it's actually going to be any good. Philo, the no-nonsense instructor. Not convinced by this one, but one I wanted to mention. You also get 1 copy of it in the starter deck. Your hero characters gain Challenger 1, but moreover, whenever you play a hero character, gain 1 lore. So maybe if there's like, and I'm not sure that there is, but for example, if you have like a Rockstar Stitch deck, and there's a whole bunch of hero characters which cost 1 or 2, maybe you could do some kind of cheesy loop with Rockstar Stitch where you just gain a whole bunch of lore in a single turn. Definitely something to look out for. Piglet, Sturdy Swordsman, a legendary card, which again I don't think is great. It's uninkable, unfortunately. It does quest for 3 and it has resist. While you have no cards in hand, this character can challenge ready characters. It's okay, but like the problem is its ability is kind of at odds with its stats. It's got 3 lore, which means that this 3 lore is very, very powerful when it quests, but its ability makes you want to challenge with it. So it's kind of, it's good at everything, but it's not amazing at anything either. I mean, maybe it is. Honestly, the card is solid. Obviously, you would prefer, though, maybe to have less lore and more stats, and then you just utilize it for its ability. But it's a good card to quest with. Pretty difficult to remove, although it is in Medusa range, which I think is a big problem for this card. I don't think it's great. It's uninkable. It's interesting. Raja, I love this card. While you have no cards in your hand, characters with cost 4 or less can't challenge this character. So similar to Tiana, similar to this Piglet card, which is rewarding you for having no cards left in hand. However, again, if I was to pick between Tiana or Piglet, I would always go Tiana. They're both uninkable, so they kind of compete with each other for that slot. You don't want that many expensive uninkables that you're forced to play in a deck which wants to dump the hand. But Raja here is inkable, which is a huge, huge deal. And I actually think its ability is very, very powerful indeed, because it can only be challenged by characters which cost 5 or more. Quest for 2, it has a solid stat line. That 4 willpower is a big deal compared to, you know, the 3 that you might expect. I think it's good. I think it's really, really good. In the right deck, of course. Raya, Unstoppable Force. This one's interesting. Not super convinced by it. 3/6 means it's in Medusa range, but it does have Challenger and Resist 2. Quest for 2. And during your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you may draw a card. I don't think it's great, but I did want to highlight it as a interesting card. Avalanche. I love this card, you know. This card's pretty damn cool. A lot of you will know I hated Rise of the Titans. It just was like, it's just doing something or it's doing nothing. Now, this card is uninkable, which does pose a problem, but you deal 1 damage to each opposing character, and then you may also banish a chosen location. In like an Emerald Steel deck with that Prince Philip card, for example, or Prince Philippe. I think it's just Prince Philip, isn't it? It was just the translation was calling it Philippe. It could be cool. I'm not super convinced because it's uninkable, but it's certainly a very, very fascinating card that you could include like 1 or 2 copies of in some decks which struggle to deal with locations, which, of course, Emerald Steel in set 3 really, really struggled, and maybe this is a card which you would much rather play, I think, than Rise of the Titans, although this one being uninkable could be a problem. The Mob Song Sing Together card from Steel. Turns out there was a lot more Sing Together cards than I thought in this video. Deal 3 damage to up to 3 chosen characters and all locations. I'm not super convinced that this card's good, but 3 damage is a lot. You can't deal 3 damage to the same card multiple times. Obviously, Amber Steel Songs comes to mind, where you've got like these cards like Ursula Vanessa with Singer 4, Ariel Spectacular Singer with Singer 5. It's okay. I don't imagine it's going to see that much play, but I could be wrong. It could be really, really good. It could be very, very good. Fortisphere, this is the popsicle I was talking about earlier. When you play this card, when you play this item, you may draw a card. Wow, that's pretty damn strong. Very, very strong. And then banish this item. You spend 1 to banish this item, and chosen character of yours gains bodyguard until the start of your next turn. So the obvious place this is going to see a whole bunch of play is in Sapphire Steel, because of Flaversham and also like the Ariel we looked at earlier. So huge support for Sapphire Steel. Elsewhere, it's probably a little bit lackluster because its ability is just not that good compared with Popsicle. But I mean, an item which draws you a card, you know, if there's other item synergy outside of Sapphire, maybe. I'm not really sure that there is, to be fair. It's definitely not the worst card you could include in your deck, but if you compare it to a card like Emerald's Improvise, which is also a 1-cost action, which gives you 1 extra strength and draws a card, like this is not doing much more than that in most decks. Improvise doesn't see much play, so I doubt Fortisphere is going to see much play outside of heavy item synergy decks, in particular Sapphire Steel, where this card is the nuts. One Last Hope, which I think might be second to last card. I think this card's not great. I don't think you get 1 copy of it in the starter deck. Maybe you could play it as like a 1 or 2 of. You're definitely not going to play that many more copies of it. Chosen character gains resist 2 until the start of your turn, but moreover, if a hero character is chosen, they may also challenge ready characters this turn. Pretty cool. There's a lot of heroes in the game. And finally, I think finally, it is Thebes, the Big Olive. You get 3 copies of this in the starter deck, and during your turn, whenever a character banishes another character in a challenge while here, gain 2 lore. So it's another location similar to the Snuggly Duckling, same kind of cost, which you can gain lore from later on in the game. So you might play it on turn 2, your opponent might feel that they can ignore it, and then suddenly they got a big problem where it starts gaining a whole bunch of lore. I'm going to wrap the video up there, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what kind of Lorcana content you want to be seeing from me in the next week before all the cards are available to play with. Super excited to do some deck building streams in the next few days, some meta prediction videos, all that kind of stuff. Let me know also in the comments down below, is there a card which you think is great, which I didn't mention in this video, because we had around 75 cards in this, just around a third of the set, a bit less than a third. I think it was like 70 cards, so around a third of the set. I just wanted to remove all of the kind of the rubbish and make this somewhat a set review, but more concise. Thank you so much for watching. Again, there's going to be so much content coming in the next few days, so make sure you are subscribed, give the video a like, and see you very damn soon. Bye now.